So the last 2 weeks, we did RVD's build. We got from WrestleMania 22 winning the Money in the Bank, building to him calling out Cena for One Night Stand. Last week, we did Cena's build. Triple H, John Cena at WrestleMania 22, building through the stories and the ridiculous tag team tornado matches. John Cena having to work Sabu and everything, building up to this One Night Stand. So here we go. We've been telling the story for 2 weeks. It's been roughly, we're looking at about 9 weeks of TV time, really, because from the beginning of April for WrestleMania to the middle of June for One Night Stand, it's really only 2 months. So 8 weeks, maybe 8 full weeks. So we dive into the pay-per-view. I want to kind of like the first half of the card up until the Cena match. I'm going to pull up some of my notes of what I said, and I want you guys to kind of to spitball off of what it felt like to me, okay? So starting off, we literally open with Taz and Lawler in a 35-second squash match. I felt like this and a match later that we'll get to was two big whys. Why did this happen? Why did this need to be on this card with the rest of the stories that were being built? What did you guys think about Taz squashing Lawler in 35 seconds?
I felt it should have been a little bit longer, definitely than 35 seconds. I mean, when you look back at the ECW history, there's a lot of history there with Lawler and him shitting on ECW, especially early on. And I mean, if you think about it, it's a 10-year thing because they started off in like 96, him talking shit about ECW. So I don't know. I can see why they did it as a squash because it was the fans didn't really like Jerry Lawler and what he stood for. Is clearly like a whole like let's just kill him type of thing. But Jerry Lawler at that time could still kind of work. So
he still had some in the tank.
Yeah, so I felt like the squash thing. I get why it happened, but
for me, I think part of it was also they did what they could with what they had at that time period too. Because let's also remember, Taz could only do a limited amount of stuff at that point. Like I think that was the last match of his career, wasn't it?
Yes.
So he really couldn't wrestle that much with his neck injuries and whatnot at that point anymore. So I almost think that maybe he wasn't medically allowed to do that much. So they said, well, Jerry Lawler pissed off the entire ECW fan base and has been doing so for about 10 years at this point.
Go out there and make a mockery of him.
Yeah, let's make a mockery out of him. The ECW fans will pop. And Taz will get his flowers at the same time. I almost think it was a way to give Taz one last match with it being in the quote-unquote ECW promotion as well. So for me, I think they did the best they could with the situation that they were presenting. And as a kid at the time watching it, because I was, I think, maybe 11, 12, I loved it.
I loved this pay-per-view. I was also 21, Alex. There's
an age. We got a little bit of an age difference between us. Yeah, no, I lied. I think I was 12 or 13, but still decent. Still a decent age difference at the time.
Joey Styles is the highlight of this match.
Joey Styles is one of the highlights of the entire pay-per-view.
Right.
Yeah.
Like him jumping on King's back, I was like, yeah. Get him, little guy.
Get him, you little scrapper.
Yeah. Jumping on like a spider monkey.
I love when he was 7.
I love when Joey Styles gets so pissed off that he finally stands up for himself. It reminds me of that time that JR beat the shit out of Paul Heyman.
Yeah.
The one thing about this is I could have went the whole show without Taz on commentary because watching AEW nowadays is like, oh, great. This was the predecessor of everything I hate. he literally from the get-go of this show till the end of it, I noticed the gimmick he was playing shit on everybody. Like no one could do any good at One Night Stand to Taz, it felt like.
I swear to God, Taz has some sort of ADHD because he just goes off on like these weird little tangents. He did it in ECW, WWE, TNA, AEW. Like he's great when he's great, but sometimes that man just goes off into the weirdest places.
Match number 2. For me, I said Angle and Orton showed shades of Malenko and Guerrero from the old ECW. The way Heyman used to book those shows, where he would have that one banger. Typically, they would use cruiserweights and luchadors, but they would have that one banger of just a catch-ass, catch-can, shoot wrestling match where the guys would go out there and just work a great match. To me, that's what I got out of this, was Angle and Orton going in there and just working a match. They just went out there and did what you would expect Randy Orton and Kurt Angle to do.
Mm-hmm.
Facts. Also, too, this is also kind of early in the like Randy Orton career.
Yeah.
So like him actually doing wrestling with Kurt Angle was kind of unheard of at that time, you know, because he was just a coming off of Evolution and just still doing the what's the Legend Killer gimmick.
Yeah.
So like he didn't really put on like a, you know, Greco-Roman style type wrestling, and you know, Kurt Angle really showed that out in him.
This was the beginning of Orton becoming the smoothest, probably professional wrestler in history, in my opinion. And I definitely think his matches with Kurt and Ray that year, and Taker within the year before that too, really started to set up the Orton that we see now.
Facts.
And also, this was, if I remember correctly, this was the return match from Orton's suspension too, wasn't it?
Oh,
Where they had Kurt break his ankle on SmackDown because he got suspended for violating the wellness policy, and this was their return match too.
Right.
This was back when Kurt was the wrestling machine with the mouthpiece. Yeah.
Set up DNA Kurt Angle.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was going with, because Peter said that was an interesting comparison. And the reason why I made that comparison in my head and in my notes was because when I remember watching old ECW, I remember seeing there's always the one or two like matches where there wouldn't be hardcore stuff happening, and you'd kind of be like, wait a second, this is just a wrestling match, you know? And they still did some stuff here, but to me, it reminded me of that part of an old school ECW show. And that's kind of the comparison I was making. So just to clarify,
I'm with you, because I think when people think of ECW, the word extreme doesn't mean violent. You know what I'm saying?
Extreme fans.
Right. It means extreme fan. It means like the highest level that you can kind of go. Right. And so like, yeah, Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko at that time was the extreme wrestler. They did everything that you could think of, you know, luchador, technical, and it was all a hybrid in one thing. And yeah, I see definitely the comparison. The crowds was nuts in this match too.
Absolutely.
The crowd through the entire pay-per-view was nuts.
We got a lot of these non-hardcore banger matches too, because that's really what ECW was founded on back when they were Eastern Championship Wrestling too, before they transitioned over. So, you know, a lot of people forget that sometimes the old style of ECW wrestling was almost what kind of set up some of like what you saw with the X Division and TNA too.
That blend of the hardcore and wrestling, like where it was very niche in a sense that you could have a regular wrestling match and then all of a sudden it would turn up to 11 and, you know, you would end up with some New Jack shit. And that was what I liked about the surprise of ECW back in the day.
Yep.
Yes.
Two of the guys, in my opinion, that were some of the best characters that came out of ECW were Tajiri and Super Crazy. They were on this card, and I want to pull it up to make sure. I'm pretty sure they ate an L here. Yeah, it was FBI, you know, full-blooded Italians, and they beat Tajiri and Super Crazy. And, you know, like, it was the second outside the main event and the Edge Foley match. It was the second longest match on the card. What's up?
If I'm not mistaken, I think Tajiri was actually on loan from Japan at the time of the One Night Stand 06.
They were doing New Japan and WWE. They had some shystiness going on. There were some points where they were real close to a handshake deal, and WWE would say or do something that would make Bushiroad want to pull back some. And I think that a few of these times, this one, the Jushin Thunder Liger incident in NXT, them signing Shin and AJ, every time they get real close to signing a deal with a working relationship with New Japan, WWE will do something and New Japan will want to pull back. And I think Tajiri may have been one of those situations because they got the agreement to bring him in, and then, the WWE starts doing WWE things again. So Tajiri's super crazy. What did you guys think about it?
Awesome.
Great.
Yeah. Not much to say other than that it was a great match.
Yeah. Again, it was just a good match on a card. Pounding through. This match surprised the shit out of me because of what it was. It ends in a no contest because of the final spot, and it was the Rey Sabu match. For the World Heavyweight title, it ends in no contest because the triple jump DDT through the table that's suspended on the rail and the ring. Yeah. They go back through it. Rey and Sabu both get knocked unconscious kayfabe-wise, and the ref has to call the match, right? Like, nobody can compete anymore. We've got to stop it. Like, we're all old enough to have remembered seeing some of the original ECW runs with Sabu and these guys. Having a chance to watch him work a match like this with Rey, though, seeing Rey Mysterio do this kind of extreme wrestling and everything they were doing. What did y'all think about Rey going hardcore?
Oh, this was great. Because, they were actually there at ECW at the same time when they started. But the fact that, they never actually had a match or anything was kind of like it was kind of a dream match when this happened. So I liked it personally, and Rey Mysterio coming out in the old school ECW Rey Mysterio gear, I thought was dope.
Yep.
I just hated that it was cut short like that.
Yeah, the finish is what pissed me off. My favorite part about it though was that I really never would have guessed the amount of chemistry that these two would have had in the ring. Sabu was just so. His character is so based off of that hardcore style of wrestling, and yes, that hardcore element was there in this match. But these two, when they weren't doing the hardcore stuff, were also putting on a damn clinic.
Yes.
During that match, and it showed that Sabu can work.
And he was much older at this point too in 06 than before. So
and he was
still
possibly putting his best matches on at that point too.
Yeah. And it was kind of cool because Rey Mysterio was Rey Mysterio that we know now. Like, he had the World Heavyweight Championship coming off of that whole thing. So it's weird that this was the only match that we had for these guys.
Yeah, the one time they crossed paths.
Yeah. Two biggest underdogs from each company.
Absolutely.
Well, with the exception of Tommy Dreamer, because that's, that was his whole shtick.
Always, that was his entire personality. Rey Sabu was awesome. The triple jump. I was trying to think. I had one more thing to bring up for this match, and I lost it. I'll come back to it.
I'll also added too that even though Rey Mysterio was a WWE guy, he got the cheer and the love and respect as if he was an ECW long timer. I mean, he was, but he was clearly a WWE guy at this time too.
Well, he was also one of the only people in that whole WWE versus ECW storyline that did not. They had his character not take shots at ECW because of him coming from there.
Yes, right.
He defended both companies. Essentially, He said ECW gave me my start, but I am also representing this company right now. And I think that they like that as opposed to every other WWE guy just shitting constantly on ECW.
Right.
Sabu, when I had a chance to talk to Sabu to line up an interview, we couldn't come to terms on a price tag for it. That was the issue. But he and I have had a few conversations. And my favorite thing that he ever said was, when we finally have a chance to sit down, we'll have plenty to talk about, because God knows I have a shit ton of botch spots and I've taken more than my fair share of chair shots. And I was
I love that.
That's why I named my podcast. The fact that he knew, he was I'll have plenty of botch spots and God knows I've taken a ton of chair shots. And I was
great.
Yes.
That's a clip. That's an audio clip right there, brother.
Yeah. I was really until Tommy went to WWE and he just became a normal guy. I don't think there's very few points in Tommy Dreamer's life where I would say he was a normal guy, but that WWE
hip spit in WWE.
Yeah, he was close to being normal. 2 more matches before we get to the Cena match. Foley, Edge, and Lita. and a 20-minute hardcore train wreck. They had, let's take a look at it. It was Terry Funk, Tommy Dreamer, and Beulah McGillicuddy, Big Ol' Beulah, in a 5, in what essentially was the second longest match of the night, almost 20 minutes. And Edge, Mick Foley, and Lita got over. This is after. This was right after the Edge and Lita sex scene stuff, right?
Yeah.
You got to think about this is after Foley turned on hardcore and he started wearing the suit again, and he was Mr. Hardcore and stuff like that. So they were like the antithesis rolling into this ECW arena. The biggest heels of what could have been the biggest, most over stars having Foley come back. Plus, you get the story of him and Funk. What did you guys think about, just having this thrown in there? This was a chance. This is their New Japan 10-man tag match to get everybody on the card, right? They just needed to get these names out there.
As great as both world title matches were on this card, this was my favorite match of the whole night. And it was because it did remind me of the extreme aspect of ECW, and just being able to, as a kid, now look back on it and also realize that that was the last time I was going to see Terry Funk wrestle on national television / pay-per-view. That was just, it was fucking awesome, man. I love everything about this match. And it also was really cool that we'll talk about it later, how Edge went from being in this pay-per-view, being the most hated guy to the most loved guy. All in one night.
And if you look at the timeline, it's literally only 45 minutes from when it happens, from him being booed out of the fucking arena with Foley and Lita. About 40 minutes later, he's the most over person in the building, not named Rob Van Dam.
In professional wrestling, not named Rob Van Dam.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's also take a second to remember, as much as Rob Van Dam was made during this pay-per-view, this pay-per-view also cemented the Rated R superstar, in my opinion, too.
I was just gonna touch on that. This was basically Edge's coming out party in terms of hitting the strides with the Rated R superstar. This version of Edge is probably my favorite too, because he was just heel on heel. He was every nuisance that he could do to make you hate him, he did. I mean, the way he pinned Beulah McGillicuddy, but doing the 3 pounces and putting her in that position, dude, come on,
Rhea Ripley wouldn't be doing it now if he never did it.
Right. And just everything that Edge and Lita were doing at that time was just hitting. I do got to give a little bit of a spit, shout out Smack and Raw, to Funk, and not so much Funk. I guess you could say Mick Foley. I understand the whole gimmick that he was doing, but you could tell in that time frame of the actual match, I think he just realized, this gimmick sucks, and I should have just been the hardcore guy the whole time.
Because he just legend.
Right. He just didn't seem into it,
Rated R superstar.
I have been under the firm opinion for many and many years, as many bad things that happened with WWE CW, the rebirth of it, Edge would not have been the main attraction star that he was, or he may have, and it may have taken longer, but that all happened because of ECW coming back during the time that it did.
Facts. Yeah, 100%.
Well, gets us to the semi-main event, and this one probably won't take long. What the fuck was Balls Mahoney doing in a semi-main event in 2006?
No, see, what you're not asking is, why not Balls Mahoney?
Why was Balls Mahoney not in every main event in WWE all year in 2006?
It is almost 20 years later, and I still don't have an answer to this one.
RIP to the Balls Mahoney too, by the way.
Oh, big time. But it wasn't even I get it. ECW original, everything Balls did in ECW to build everything, right? Why was it the 6-man tag match the semi? Why wasn't Angle Orton the semi? Wasn't Ray Sabu the semi?
Right, Ray Sabu, right.
Why was Balls Mahoney your semi-main event at One Night Stand?
Or even Edge Foley Lita could have been the semi-main event.
Yeah,
I think the only reason they probably didn't do that one is because they wanted to keep Edge enough time away from the main event. And it was already 45 minutes, as you said.
Yeah.
So I can understand that one, but you could have easily plugged Ray and Sabu in as the semi-main event, and rightfully it should have been.
Peter wants to know, in our opinion, who would have Edge faced in the original ECW? Like, who would you have wanted him to wrestle in the original ECW crowd?
Like if he was during the heyday of ECW.
Yeah,
Raven.
let's just Raven, like
Raven.
peak Raven.
Peak Raven.
Yeah.
I'd also say, granted, they did it on this pay-per-view, but if you were putting the Rated R Superstar in old ECW, he would have been a perfect foil for underdog babyface Tommy Dreamer at the time, as well. And
Staying
honestly,
one up on him. Yeah.
he could have put some good bangers on with Ray and Eddie in ECW too, as opposed to just the WWE matches that they did. They could have done more.
Right.
Edge versus Lance Storm, another banger.
That was just gonna come to my mind. Yeah,
And
Shane
Jericho
Douglas,
early.
Yeah, Lionheart, Chris Jericho, like right after he got back from Japan.
Yeah, 'cause
Edge versus Malenko.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Oh yeah.
If we're talking Radar Superstar and the promo skills, I would like to see a promo for promo with him and Shane Douglas when they were doing the whole triple threat
Oh
thing.
yeah. Thank you for the subscription, Bo.
You're welcome.
Damn, really thinking about it, that version of Rated R Superstar in 06 really would have done real well in the original ACW.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
All right. It's taken us 2 weeks to get here, boys and gal. If Cena wins, we riot. So we get there, we get to the match. RVD comes out to a Hammerstein Ballroom crowd of, what does Hammerstein hold? 5,000 people?
Yeah, give or take, I think.
It was sold out 2,500. So I was way off. 2,500, and it sounded like 5,000. RVD blew the roof off during his entrance. And I talked about this earlier because I didn't remember the crowd turning on him this soon. The moment Cena's music hit, that place you could hear the boos in the house when I was watching it through the entire house from how loud they were booing. Al, I'm going to get you back in the conversation now because you're the least experienced wrestling fan in the room. You've seen people get that epic boo, Dominic Mysterio style heat. Have you ever seen somebody get that reaction, though, where they were throwing his T-shirt back at him and shit when he was doing the John Cena throw the armbands out in the crowd and T-shirt stuff? They hated him so much. They were throwing John Cena's merch back in the fucking ring at him.
More than once.
Yeah. Dude wiped his ass with a John Cena shirt.
I was just going to say, yup.
Yeah.
That same shirt got thrown back at him twice before that match started.
I mean, I'd throw John Cena's merch back at him.
I wouldn't in 2024. I'd keep that shit.
Yeah, I wouldn't now. I think he's definitely like his 2015 run where he started actually adding more to his repertoire really won me over. But back then I would have done the same fucking thing.
See, if it was Doctor Thugonomics, I would keep all of that. But past that part,
Peter says he hated this match. He said he was Cena all the way. But looking at the age difference here, as me in my early 20s, as a young adult, remembering ECW and getting that nostalgia factor, that's why I was like, fuck the system. Give the belt to RVD. Let my boy finally win the big one. The injury that made him lose the TV title in ECW, everything that happened to keep him from getting the big belt. I was like, it's my boy's time. Give RVD the belt. That's why I loved it so much as a fan. Yeah, it was cool to finally get that moment for him as a fan. Some of the big parts of this match, though, being avid people who have watched Cena grow throughout his career, what did y'all think about hardcore Cena?
I think
Go ahead, Alex.
I think they missed out on the perfect opportunity, if there ever was going to be one, to turn him heel at that point in time. A full-blown heel turn in all of WWE programming. It could have been done, and it could have been done right at that point.
Yes.
And then I think you would have been able to then still get the same babyface Cena we have now finishing out his career. But you could have added so much to his personality and just everything. It was the perfect setup, because during that time where he was essentially playing a heel to ECW, I give the man his flowers. Everyone hated him, but he was playing that role of the villain of ECW perfectly.
Uh-huh.
And what I would not give to Cena when it came to his wrestling abilities back at that time, I always gave to him when it came to his promo skills and his acting. Because since the days of Dr. Thugonomics, that's one thing he has never really been bad at. Until basically he got kind of censored, if you will, with the whole PG era. But when he was given a mic to talk, that man hit a homer every time. So that's my biggest thing. You missed out on a perfect opportunity for a solid heel run.
That's exactly, and you brought up a great point too, Alex, because every time that this conversation of like, oh, Cena should be heel, I'm like, the only time they could have done it was at this point. That would have made the most sense, like logically, for his career. If you look at his career from point A to point B and where it is now, like this would have been the most sense.
Yeah, the only other option they had was when they were doing the second Rock Cena match, but I feel like
everybody kind of leaned into it, but not too much. Yeah,
you really only had 2 opportunities, so if you're going to have that conversation, you got to talk about one of those 2 times.
Exactly, facts.
All right. So we get the win. RVD gets it. This is where we get that little bit of shystiness, though, we were talking about, because the finish of this match, Edge shows back up in a trench coat and a motorcycle helmet, and he spears the ever-loving shit out of John Cena through a table propped up in the corner, and it is vicious. And he doesn't take the helmet off until after he does the move, and everybody realizes it's Edge coming back out, and the place loses its ever-loving mind.
Thank you, Edge.
Yeah. What did you think about it, man? Like, I know it's not the first time you watched it, but that excitement level of who the fuck is that? And then finding out it's Edge coming out with the build that we've talked about, Triple H and Edge and Cena and everything building up and then fighting. Because, again, this was Edge's title shot. If RVD hadn't called his shot with the Money in the Bank, Edge was the number 1 contender.
Yes.
So, like, what did you think about this? Edge interjecting himself. Like, what did you think?
Perfect way for him to put into, like, I scratch your back, scratch my back, give me my title shot.
Yeah.
That I rightfully deserve and I've rightfully earned. So they did it perfectly by putting, that's why I think that's the Extreme Rules or Hardcore or whatever they wanted to call it, six-way tag was perfectly placed. Because you didn't think that those 4 guys went through hell, and Mick Foley pulled it out of Edge at WrestleMania that year, showing that Edge can go hardcore.
Yep, that was a great match.
And now he's got to get into the ring with 3 of the best, especially 2 of the greatest hardcore wrestlers ever to do it. And he held his own. And no one thought after the beating he took in that match, was he going to be able to come out and spear Cena?
Right.
So it was the perfect way to put him in a match, give him his match time, and then turn around and shock the crowd. Because I can almost guarantee that no one in that crowd goes, Edge will be the one that screws Cena.
No, I think everybody thought it was going to be Heyman. Heyman or Sabu.
Right.
When I went into watching it the first time, I thought it was going to be the Big Show. With him just like switching over that Wednesday before. I was like, that's how they're going to get that belt off Cena. Big Show can show up, do what he's got to do, and then RVD just hits a 5-star and call it a day.
My original going into the show, my original thought actually was going to be that it was going to be Kurt Angle that screwed him over, only because of Angle being touted as one of the biggest signings of ECW. Yeah. And really, up until Angle left WWE for TNA, it really seemed almost like a lock-in that Angle was eventually going to be ECW champion.
Yeah.
But this moment, this main event cemented Edge being my favorite superstar of all time for literally the rest of my life. Will's heard it a million times. I'm an Edge mark, and I'll be an Edge mark until I die. Adam Copeland, his booking could be shitty. in AEW. It could not be shitty. He will always be my favorite for the rest of time. And that moment cemented it because he just came off like a fucking rock star, man.
Mhm.
And it never stopped. The
Yeah.
train never stopped rolling. I'm that way with Foley. I have a lot of trouble talking about Foley's career because of how hard I mark out for him. Because in my eyes, that man never did anything wrong. So I can't do any real unbiased like reporting on what he's done because, in my opinion, Foley could shit in the ring and I'd be like, fucking 5 stars.
Yeah.
That's
That's why I can that's why on a podcast I can never really touch on the Edge Matt Hardy stuff because was Edge in the wrong? Absolutely he was. But am I going to be able to say bad things about him? Never in my life.
No.
Ever.
That's how I am with Foley. Even his worst stuff, I was like, it just wasn't as good as, Jack in the 90s, but it's still Foley, right? Like,
yeah.
I'm the same way with Kurt. Like, I don't care what Kurt could go out and just finger poke a Doom. 5-star match right there. It's Kurt Angle.
Bingo, yeah. We all have that one person.
That's that suspension to disbelief, brother, and that's what keeps the business alive.
Agreed.
You know who I thought that could have been in that whole motorcycle thing? I actually thought it might have been Bill Alfonso.
Ooh.
That would've been cool.
Just because he's one guy in RVD's like career that like kind of got erased.
Kind of 300 pounds.
Bill Alfonso just spears the shit out of John Cena. Realistically, we should have been seeing Cena versus Alfonso at TLC.
That's all that matters.
That year.
That's all that matters.
But yeah, it was great though. And you know the thing about too, you guys I know we're talking about Edge. The whole thing with that WrestleMania match that he had too was that like I think Edge developed this perfect timing type of thing in his ring, his ring matches because when you do a hardcore match, you can't just like I'm gonna throw the barbed wire out, I'm gonna throw the fire out. Like there has to be build to it and timing. Mm-hmm. So like I know it's such a simple thing when he took off his helmet, but he waited a little bit for everyone to digest what was gonna happen, and then he took off the helmet.
It was just his timing from that moment on was impeccable.
You see people imitate this in indies now. We saw Moxley do it in GCW. Then we saw Nick Gage do it mocking Moxley where they went out in the ski mask and they did the little swagger and then he pulled his mask off and it was Moxley. And then a few weeks later, the same thing happened and he did the little swagger. But when he pulled the mask off the second time, it turns out it was Nick Gage doing it. And I feel like a lot of people like pull from this moment with Edge, like the anticipation of waiting to pull the helmet off to see who it was. Like we've seen other people imitate this, and I love that for this moment because it was.
I know Matt Cardona did it too.
He did.
I thought, and when Mox did it, didn't he do it on? Didn't everybody think it was Cardona in that moment?
Yes,
too?
Correct. Yeah,
yeah. Because
you're right. It was Cardona and Mox.
It was the other way. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
But Cardona and Mox have such a similar build too that everybody thought like. I was on Twitter when that was happening, and everybody was like, "Oh my god, it's fucking Matt Cardona!" And then you saw the reveal. No one expected it to be Jon Moxley.
Yeah. We go into the aftermath, of One Night Stand, and RVD is awarded the ECW heavyweight title. Vince is like, "Yo, you're an ECW. You were drafted. You win the title. It's the ECW World's Heavyweight title now again, right?" Mm-hmm. And RVD gives one of the most. I'll say it's a Ron Killings response because he's like, "No, bro, I'm going to keep both because I like this one because it spins." And I was like, that, and he spun it. And I was like, that is the most R-Truth, like RVD, Matt Riddle shit I would ever see in pro wrestling. Because he was like, "Nah, boss, I'll just keep them both because this one spins." And I was like, what?
Yeah. And then that literally, like, I've never heard someone just be like, "Oh, this spins," and suddenly we have 2 official world titles.
Yeah, that was all it took. I'm going to keep this one too because it spins.
Because like in storyline, it was supposed to the WWE title was just supposed to change to being rebranded as the ECW title. He's like, "Nah, I got 2 now."
Right.
And then they're like, "Oh yeah, RVD is the first man to hold both world titles," and I'm like, "Yeah, because he didn't give the other one up."
Robbie 2 belts.
He didn't win 2 of them. He won 1.
Right after that, we saw him finally give Edge his title shot, right? at Vengeance, not Vengeance Day. I double checked my notes because I was like, I thought it was, and then I realized, okay, it was Vengeance for a
Vengeance,
while.
yeah.
Just Vengeance. He gives Edge his match. He in a lot of ways, people say he upset Edge because a lot of people thought Edge was going to mow down Cena for that title when he eventually got his shot. Right, he had been built up to have that opportunity. People honestly looking at it, in my opinion, it kind of felt like RVD was a little bit of an underdog going into this defense against Edge, but getting the win, like, then we get to what happened. So just looking at that, how did you feel coming out of his defense, beating Edge, kind of solidifying himself? Because it was Triple H, Edge, and Cena. He beat Cena, he knocked off Edge, and now it was like the only person left for RVD to beat is going to be Triple H, and he solidified himself as the top of the company, right?
Mm-hmm.
It felt justified. RVD, so many different companies, different times, felt like he was just about there. And then I was shocked too, because I never thought RVD was always one of the best, if not the best in-ring style when he was in his younger days, but it never felt like they were going to make him the guy. You know, those group of guys, like at the time, your Jerichos, your Edges, your RVDs, Jericho, even with winning the world title, never felt like they were going to be the top guy. So this for me was like the it's similar to Mankind, Mick Foley, the underdog guy becoming the face of the company when you don't expect them to. And I also didn't expect them to do it at that time because they had just done it with Rey Mysterio earlier that year too.
Yeah.
And back then, WWE did not repeat their booking as often as you would see it from Vince later on.
Yep.
I thought WWE was going to pull the trigger on RVD being a world champion back in Invasion with WCW and the Alliance. Because if you go back and look at that aspect of him, he was one of the most over wrestlers at that period. Like, he could have been a WCW champion under the WWE umbrella. And I was like, well, they didn't pull the trigger now, so now he's just going to be relevant to the mid-card for the rest of his career. And then the resurgence of ECW, like him going, hey, we just did this documentary. Can we do a show? And it building into what it did. They finally gave RVD his flowers. And the only thing I would have changed is the Edge interference. I would have loved to see RVD beat Cena by himself with no outside interference. Beat the biggest guy in the company and say, I did it on my own. F y'all.
I think they could have done the Edge interference storyline still, but they could have waited for a Cena RVD rematch.
Yes.
Because then you still get Edge entwined, get the same story, but you get RVD beating Cena by himself at One Night Stand.
Giving the crowd like, all right, our guy did it alone. Like, finally.
Right. No, I like everything that was going into Vengeance and the way RVD looked for WWE. I mean, he was like the most popular guy. He was the most deserving champion. He put on the best matches at that point. And, WWE was doing something kind of different. I mean, they gave the title to Eddie Guerrero in 2004. And then they also gave the title to Redacted at that same time as well. So they were giving the titles.
You can say his name here.
They were giving the titles to people who were proven workers in the wrestling industry, which is something that normally doesn't happen in WWE, and it was happening. So for me, just like everybody here, I was like, yeah, let's go. So I thought it was dope. I thought it was good. And that match was great too on Vengeance.
Yeah. I hear Vacant has a good number of world titles on his waist. I heard he's a multiple-time world champion. That Vacant is just
Hall of Fame worthy champion.
It's not canon in Connecticut though, so they still say Flair has the record, but Vacant has the record for most world titles.
I think as a joke at some point Triple H needs to, like, maybe even in like the celebrity wing, just induct Vacant into the Hall of Fame.
If we look at it, Vacant has been a champion in multiple companies and sometimes at the same time.
Yeah. Holding gold in multiple titles. It's Vacant, maybe the GOAT.
The greatest ever.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone talks about Hogan's title reign.
But
That's
vacant.
the right vacant. That's what you need to get, brother.
Also, to touch on what Jax was saying too with RVD and the invasion thing, there was multiple times he was just on that cusp of being world champion too. Really,
Yes.
when he was feuding with Triple H during the Evolution
the triple threat.
times too.
Yes. Yup.
They almost pulled the plug on him so many times. I feel like they kind of forced themselves into that position to where if they did not pull the plug on RVD at One Night Stand, that the fans were actually going to revolt.
They were going to riot.
Yeah.
So we get to the unfortunate part. All right. So we look at it.
Oof.
We're talking from April 2nd to July 2nd, literally 3 months to the day, guys. RVD gets arrested for DUI and marijuana possession. It was the subsequent drop of the title after the arrest, everything that went wrong. Peter said it back a little bit ago. Where'd it go? I'll never understand the idea of, hey, I'm a champion. Let me go get in trouble with the law and screw it all up.
Jeff Hardy.
Jeff Hardy, perfect example. Do we see, I talk about it on After Dark all the time. Do we see wrestlers getting in their own way by not knowing and understanding what true limits mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I participate. There's no question about it. I've never hid the fact that I have an entire show dedicated to cannabis culture. Okay. And Bo's my co-host for it.
Great show. Watch it, guys.
But
same.
I'm very functional with my life. I run a catering company. I was a successful executive chef. I'm a published journalist, but I don't let marijuana affect my life. You can do both. And I'm just hyping myself up, by the way.
Recreational has to stay recreational.
Yeah. Are wrestlers getting in their own way by not knowing when to pull or when to pull back or stopping their limits or stopping from getting to that point? Maybe they find themselves in DUIs or DWIs or drug possessions. Liv Morgan, was it Liv that just got one? Liv just got one. You know, like, are they getting in their own way by just making frivolous, like, laws, or they're breaking frivolous laws rather?
100%. The most recent, aside from Liv Morgan, the most recent case of it on a bigger scale is Matt Riddle. Yes. He failed his, before the whole airport incident, he failed the wellness policy. And from what I hear, I'm pretty sure he tested positive for cocaine.
They don't even test for weed in WWE anymore, to put it in perspective.
No, and he still failed.
Yeah, what did you have in your system to fail a drug test that doesn't test for marijuana?
Oh, and Matt Riddle is the reason that they don't test for weed anymore. That they changed that policy so they could sign him.
Yep.
And then he still failed a drug a wellness policy check for a different drug when they changed the whole policy for him.
So that way he could continue to smoke weed.
Yeah. And then he still fucking loot out. And Jeff Hardy's the biggest example. You guys talked about still loving Jeff Hardy earlier too. I have been the biggest Jeff Hardy mark he's one of the first pro wrestlers I ever saw on television. It got to a point with this latest arrest in AEW that, like, I love what he does in the ring as a person. And it pains me to say I can't respect him anymore because you're doing this stuff while you're driving and you're putting other people's lives at risk. When your recreational activities are putting innocent people's lives at risk, I can't personally.
You can't support that anymore.
No,
right?
I can support your character. Will, you talk about this on TikTok with Redacted all the time. I can support your character as a person. I can't respect him anymore on that alone.
I'm the same way with a ton of people. I say, fuck Terry. I respect everything that Hulk Hogan did for the business. Without him and Vince McMahon, in a lot of ways, wrestling wouldn't be where it is. That doesn't mean that I support the absolutely terrible things Hulk Hogan says or the terrible things that Vince McMahon has done. But I can sit here and go, without those two guys, wrestling wouldn't be where it is today. But because I can separate the character on my television from the real life person saying and doing these terrible things.
Right. And you can't be doing that when you're a world champion of a company. Like, let's go back to the Jeff Hardy thing for a second, and then I'll be done with this. Jeff Hardy's incident at TNA Victory Road 2011.
Oh my gosh.
That's terrible. I'm laughing at the comment, not at Jeff Hardy at Victory Road. Sorry.
But this is a perfect example of it. The Jeff Hardy incident at TNA Victory Road 2011. if you really look back at it, that moment in time is the reason that TNA and Impact went through all these troubles that they have over the year. Everything went downhill. Yes, it might have been partially on the Hogan Bischoff regime, but that moment in time, TNA went downhill until they started putting the pieces back together in the last few years. And it was Jeff Hardy's actions that put that company almost out of business. As their world champion.
To the fact where Sting went out there and said, if you kick out, I'm legitimately going to beat your ass.
Yeah. And Sting's not the type of guy to do that. Sting, for everything I've read, is a very loving person in the business. But he put his heart and soul into putting that company on the map. And Jeff almost destroyed everything in one night. So sometimes you gotta know when, like that. You can't let that fame get to your head that bad to where you're possibly putting hundreds and thousands of people out of work.
Yes.
Guys,
sorry.
No, that's what I like about doing this. And one of my favorite things about this, and I say it all the time in my interviews, I don't want to talk when I do this. My goal is to bring on people that are smarter than I am. So I just have to ask questions and you guys, do your thing. And that's what I like about having great co-hosts like Bo and Al, and then having great guests like Jess and Alex, is because all I've got to do is, put the outline on and you guys paint the picture for me. I love it when my job is easy.
These situations are some of the situations I'm most passionate about when it comes to watching this, because you're letting this stuff get over into real life where it can affect real people in their lives, and that is not okay.
I want to get you on an episode of After Dark, because I think the kind of, we talk about the real life side of the pro wrestling business on that show. I definitely need to get you on that episode.
Just to touch up on that question about the whole wrestling getting into the fame and doing drugs or whatever. Like, I think if you take the word wrestler and just take it into like just people in general, because you see a lot of athletes, actors, and people just are in different types of, fields, even in regular jobs. They just can't put that shit down. You know what I'm saying? And then, like Alex said, and what all you guys said, is like, it affects not just you, but affects the entire like team of people. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, like when you put it in a bigger perspective, like it's like you just got to just keep it recreational.
In my career, I've always said that I've never hidden the fact or shied away from that. I'm a retired fuck boy. Like, that's what I did for a long time, right?
That's a shirt too, by the way. That's
retired fuck boy. When I was younger and I was a chef, I was the executive chef GM of my restaurant, and I did a Jeff Hardy. I allowed the fame and the recognition to go to my head. I was partying too hard. I ended up, letting it overflow into my real life and hurt real people. And that's when I had to start making choices and decisions in my real life, because what I was doing in my real life was affecting my professional life, my personal life, my relationships. And that's when I realized I had to start getting it under control, was because I was hurting other people besides just me. Right. I didn't mind hurting myself, but when I saw how many people I was hurting outside of just me, I was like, I can't keep doing this anymore.
Yep.
Right.
I've been in the same place, brother. It's interesting to me how, the everyday normal person like us can recognize that, but fame really does, it fucks with your brain, man. Makes you feel like you're invincible.
While we were recording this, as we get ready to plug ourselves so we can go home, I thought about it, and I've got this crazy idea, and I'm going to go through the last 3 episodes, and every match that we talked about for Cena and for RVD's run, I'm going to make a big 2-hour-long YouTube video where I'm going to clip all the matches and put them in chronological order from WrestleMania to One Night Stand, and make the last 3 episodes into one big long video. So it'll be like match, One Night Stand. You see what I mean? So both builds put together, tied together chronologically to this. And I was like, that's a good idea. But
that's good.
We made it, guys. Jess, I'm going to start with you at the top left. We're going to wrap around
my new thing.
Do you want to do the power positivity now or at the end?
Before plugs.
You want to do it before plugs? All right. I scratched that. We're not plugging ourselves yet, guys.
All right. I'll plug.
Well, we've got a new segment. This is something Al wanted to do. It's the power of positivity. Sometimes the conversations on the show get a little bit heated. We talk about some less than savory things. We've got to talk about, drug abuse and some of the nasty things that people do in their lives, Al said, I want to end every episode now on a power of positivity. So what she did was she found a TikTok with wrestlers just doing really normal people just hang out with me shit for our eye bleach of the night to go. What she gave me tonight for our first power of positivity moment is a get ready with me segment with Drew McIntyre and his cat, apparently.
Yes.
This is so wholesome, guys. I promise.
It was a nice start.
It's got the music and shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like how the cat's just chilling in the sink.
Mhm.
He's got a pretty high quality toothbrush right there.
Yeah. He's
Okay.
brushing the cat, Steve.
That's
Look at
adorable.
that. Oh, we got the lo-fi hip hop jazz thing going right now,
About ready to start dropping some bars.
dude. Look at that.
Ugh,
Smooth with the comb right there.
what a handsome little man.
It's a gorgeous creature. Do we know what his cat's name is?
I knew you were
I
gonna
was
go there.
talking about Drew.
I was like, are we talking about Drew? and
Either
cat?
one,
Look at
really.
Because both are
Huh.
equally like.
I know Drew's name. I want to know the cat's name.
You know, they both have really well kept manes too.
IWC is just such a toxic place, you know. So it's nice to see like something positive.
I
I
throw into consideration for this Stone Cold and Poncho.
I know.
You guys know about Stone Cold and his cat Poncho? Have you seen this?
A little bit.
I haven't seen it, but I know he like when he used to do the podcast all the time. He would always mention like that cat, so I know he has a huge love
His
for
whole
Poncho.
Instagram now. Check it out after the show. Go look at Stone Cold's Instagram. Nothing but him and his cat Poncho now. Like Poncho will ride around on his shoulder when he's like on the tractor doing like ranch shit.
Yeah.
Or ride around on his shoulder like a goddamn
Yeah.
parrot. All right. So power of positivity, guys. Always a little bit of fun. But now, Just tell everybody what's going on with Marks and Mike's, the Get Show podcast. What's new and exciting in your world, brother?
Well, if you enjoy my comments and everything I said, you can find me on Get Your Podcast on Twitter, Get Your Podcast on Instagram. You can also find me with Marks and Mike's on Thursdays. Get Your Podcast will be get together this week talking about basically Rumble and the week of wrestling. The sweaty session is going to be kind of nostalgia. It's like if wrestlers had a MySpace account. So
I love that.
God, that's amazing.
Hell yeah. I love it. The Late Shown Diaries, by the way, one of my favorite podcasts.
Oh, appreciate
series
that,
I've
man.
ever done, dude. Love that. Everything y'all do with that.
Appreciate that.
Alex, what's going on with you, brother?
I'm actually going to be making my semi part-time return to Perched on the Top Rope here soon.
Number one podcast in America.
Oh yeah, proudly. I took about almost a year off. I just was kind of burnt out from the wrestling business, kind of had some personal stuff going on in the last year or whatnot. Not necessarily going to be making a full-time return on the podcast, but we are going to be starting a new short series on YouTube and TikTok called it's going to be the Todd Talk as opposed to TED Talk. And it's going to be me just reviewing the biggest things that are happening in wrestling. They're going to be little shorts. We're going to be throwing them on Facebook too. But other than that, if you want to check out Perched on the Top Rope as well, you can check us out at youtube.com/Perched on the Top Rope. You can find us just about anywhere that you can find any sort of podcast, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, you name it. I'm not going to list the 5 million places that Lee puts on there because he's got this whole shtick that I simply won't remember. You can also find us at Twitter on Perch Top Rope. You can find us on Instagram as well, and just about any other place you can find social media. Other than that, Lee sends his regards.
I love Lee. I talk to Lee and you and Kai and RN pretty much daily.
Yeah.
And I love it. Peter says, "What's up, Gitcho?" He's Toothless Boy 1 on Twitter.
Yo.
So everybody follow Peter. Go give him some love.
Follow
the cat's
Peter.
name
Follow
is
Peter.
Chaz. Give Peter some love. And Chaz is a great name for an all-black cat. I love that. Al, it's your turn. What's going on?
So I am working on gathering some ladies together to start the Boss Bitch Power Hour. So if anybody's ladies or, the ladies that are here would like to be a guest on the Boss Bitch Power Hour, where we just talk about like whatever is floating our boat that day in the world of the ladies, hit me up. You can, let's see, we are going to be starting up the heel support group again. I just have to have time to do it. But other than that, you can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitters at justagirl918 for all of my shenanigans.
The shenanigans.
Shenanigans.
All right, housekeeping. I'm going to make this quick because I have to go to the bathroom.
You skip
Jax, did I skip you?
Yes, sir.
I'm so sorry,
I have
Bubba.
a forgettable face. It's cool.
Ooh, this man.
The
Who,
door will
me?
be Allison. You're more than welcome. The door will be locked when Will tries to walk in. I'm just saying.
Will can sleep in the car.
I'm so sorry. I went
Sheds,
boom,
you can
boom,
figure it out.
boom. I'm sorry, Bo. I love you. The first time I've ever done
Pack
that.
your bags and find a plane ticket. Will's staying home, and I have an extra ticket to Rumble.
Fuck you, dude.
You can find me on Off the Top Media here in a little bit for Sorry for the Interruption as we make our Sunday debut. Here every Sundays for Botch Botch and Chair Shots. Tuesday for Nerdy News at 420 and Off the Top Media for NXT on Tap. Anywhere else, follow me on Twitter at JackBo2020.
That's all he had to say, Will. You
I'm
couldn't
so
have even given him that.
Forget about me. Bullshit.
It's like my first night on the job. I've never actually done this. I'm just a clone.
He didn't even need to take up that much of your time,
I
man.
feel like Mustafa Ali and how WWE treated him.
Free hashtag free Jaxbo.
Free Jackson.
I've got an idea for a Photoshop picture.
Rumble's next weekend. Anybody in the chat that feels like they want to contribute to the shenanigans and want to help us out getting Botch Spots and Chair Shots to Campa, you can donate to the PayPal at Botch Spots or Venmo at Allison-Siegel. What'd I say? Tampa.
It didn't sound like you said.
I have a speech impediment and I was also adopted. Do you want to talk about that?
Wow.
You're
Bring that
Jewish?
up.
Wait, you're going to
I'm
Tampa?
Jewish.
You're going to Tampa for the Rumble?
I'm going to Krampa, apparently.
Krampa.
Krampus. He's going to see Krampus.
I'm going to see
Krampus.
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 The movie's pretty cool.
It was
Maybe
really
I'll
cool.
watch it.
God.
Hashtag Okada for Rumble.
Hashtag Okada for Rumble.
Hey, let's go.
Follow us anywhere you do anything on the internet. Facebook, Instagram, iHeartRadio, Twitter, all of it. You have all the options. If you check the Discord link in the bio, that's your direct link to all the hosts and producers and people from Rivet City Radio, Botch Spots and Chair Shots, and Off the Top Media. All of us are there. That's your direct link. If you want in on Botch Spots and Chair Shots After Dark on Tuesday for the open mic night, you have to be a member of the Off the Top Discord to get in. That's where I'll be dropping the link. If you want in on Tuesday night, you have to join that Discord. Alex, I'll send you the link so you don't have to
Oh,
search for
perfect.
it.
I was just about to search for it. I literally had my phone in hand.
I saw you pick your phone up. I was like, I'll send it to you. Also,
he
in
treats me
the
well.
I do my best for you, baby. I love you. Merch links, Botch Spots and Chair Shots Off the Top, my spread shop, my spread shirt. You can check all of that there as well. Most importantly, though, as I butcher all of this, I thank you guys for hanging out with us. Amazon Prime. If you have Amazon Prime, you get a free Prime gaming subscription. Give it to us. Give it to Perch. Give it to Gitcho, Creation World, She Elite, the Wolfpack Podcast. Give it to any of your friends that you can sub for. Just don't let Amazon get it. Jeff Bezos has too much money.
Facts.
We did it. 2 hours, 1 minute, 58 seconds. This says the link is expired. Peter, I will send it to you in Discord as Swell, my friend, to make sure you guys can get a piece of it. Anything for the class before I talk real fast?
That 2 hours flew by.
That was a
I
quick
didn't
2
even know it
hours.
was 2 hours until you said it, to be honest.
Yeah. I usually try to wrap up right at 2, and I feel like 2:02 pretty good. I hit my times. I can hit my
One of
times.
the quickest, long shows I've ever done.
It's an easy 2 hours when you got good friends.
Hey.
But Now, as we close another episode of Botch Pots and Chair Shots, I'll take a minute. Thank you for listening. Remind you to go wherever you do anything on the internet, like, follow, subscribe, unsubscribe, but then subscribe again. Leave a comment telling Alex how fucking cute he is, or that Just is a fantastic guest. Either way, it helps the algorithm and it helps find new listeners. If you're feeling really generous, don't be one of the VIP people. Head over to patreon.com and donate to the Rivet City Radio Podcast Network. You get some fantastic swag. We get some fantastic guests. It's a win-win for my boy Just from the Get Yo Podcast, Alex from Perched on the Top Rope, Jaxpo, the Ginger Ninja from pretty much fucking everywhere, and the Boss Bitch Al. I am B. Will Gray. Thanks for stopping by and listening, my people.